Chapter 10, Edge to Edge, Abundant Living. When I was growing up in the 1970s, arcades and arcade machines were just becoming popular. Home systems were becoming available, but not very many people could afford them. And even if you could, the games were expensive, so, really it was more feasible, or it seemed more feasible to go play them someplace else. Even though Marion was a small town, we had a mall, and that mall had an arcade. But for me, that was kind of a problem because it was way on the south side of town, and I couldn't walk there or ride my bike there. Even though teens would go there and hang out, have your parents take you, my parents would do that, but that wasn't super convenient. And I liked playing some arcade games. So fortunately for me, a vendor close to my house, not in my neighborhood, but close enough that I could ride my bike to or walk, put in some vending machines in their lobby. And in that pizza shop, the game I played the most was in the left-hand corner of the lobby. It was Asteroids. The graphics were super simple, but it was a lot of fun to play. And beside it, I think they had a Pac-Man or a Miss Pac-Man. I didn't like playing that quite as much. And then a pinball machine. I played that once in a while. But I think I spent the most money on Asteroids and got pretty good at it, but not very good at it. So the money went pretty fast. And I can remember vividly taking my money into the pizza shop, and I would have change, not a quarter, not dollar bill, but 25 cents of change. And I would, hand it to the proprietor and get a quarter and go play a game. That was a lot of fun. Now, I understand that there are problems today with how much time we spend playing video games and stuff like that. But if we look at the research, playing games is not a problem. Playing the games actually can help you in many ways, and studies have shown that. It's the amount of time we played. And believe me, I was not good enough for my quarter to go very far. But to have money to play, I needed to make that money. So my parents, to teach us the value of money and responsibility, gave us some chores and an allowance, which wasn't a lot of money and went pretty fast. If you think about, I don't know, with $1 or $2 a week, that go pretty fast between tithe and other things. And I didn't just, use money on video games. And so at the chores I remember, I can remember one of the big ones that we had to do. I won't show pictures of this, but I think I was responsible for picking up the dog poop in the backyard. Back then, you didn't use plastic bags to pick it up. You used a shovel and a hoe and buried it. Not going to show you any of that. The other thing I remember doing is mowing the lawn. And the thing I hated doing, absolutely hated doing, was washing the dishes. My older sister, Christy, and I had to share that chore. And we would trade off daily or weekly who washed and who dried. And we had a drying rack for the dishes, but for some reason, we tagged somebody as being responsible for drying. And I think that so that if, we didn't have to just wait for them to dry or needed them, we just got in the habit of doing that. So I vividly remember arguing with Christy back and forth about whose turn it was. So much so that sometimes my dad would step in and just fine, I'll do it. And that was so guilt-ridden, that passive aggressive, just I'll do it, really worked, at least on me. And not that he did it very often, but my dad was really good at sharing ideas without a lot of words, and sometimes saying something once or twice and it sinking in. And that was a really good example. We really didn't want dad stepping in to do our chore. That's not cool. But I do remember one time where it was Christy's turn to wash. Absolutely Christy's turn to wash. And she did. And I don't know if she did this on purpose, and she might have. But there was something on a dish in the drying rack. And so I, take the towel and the dish and I take it into my dad and I said, hey, she didn't do a good job. I was going to get her in trouble or make her wash the dishes more. I mean, she's already washing the dishes. And my dad looked at me and goes, a good dryer would take care of that, or something to that effect. And he was right, because my towel was moist enough that the little smudge or whatever it was, I could easily wipe it off and put the dish away. It's that kind of wisdom that my dad imparted. And that's why I'm doing this video, actually, is I've been outside this winter shoveling snow a lot, as I'm sure lots of you have been. And even though I have a snowblower, I still shovel a lot. And while I've been out there shoveling, I keep thinking of something my dad said to me, I think he only said it once. And it has really stuck with me. And that has caused me to go back and think about why I shovel and clear my driveway the way I do, and other life lessons around this time. So I'm going to work up to that. So like I said, my sister and I argued and we did the dishes, got some money. Well, that wasn't enough. So I started mowing lawns in the neighborhood. This too was a common thing for teenagers to go do those kind of neighborly chores. You do them for your neighbors, not go some real far away. So you need to do a good job because you wanted to have repeat business and do it again, each week or every couple of weeks. And your parents knew those people, so you better do a good job. And so I mowed the lawn and think about it, this scrawny kid out there pushing the lawnmower, one of those gas-powered lawnmowers that was just puffing and burning oil. Oh my gracious, that they were not good for us. And I sweated a lot because I get hot. And then you can just imagine the lawnmower working just as hard as me and being on fire. No, I don't think I ever had one catch on fire like this, but still, it's kind of fun to think about. So that would give me pocket change. And again, I could take that pocket change and go to the pizza shop and cash in my dollar or my change, get some quarters and play Asteroids. And I did that a lot. But then, of course, I'd have to do dishes or something. So, not a lot of fun. Well, in the wintertime, you can't mow the yards, but you still need to make some money, right? And so I started shoveling walks. And I've been thinking about this a lot, and I don't have the details exactly right. But I think this was the first time I shoveled a sidewalk around the corner. So I really did corner the market in my neighborhood in terms of like the yards right in my direct neighbors on my street and then around the corner. So I mowed several yards right through there. And it wasn't a lot because we lived in a humble neighborhood. So our yards were small. So that was pretty easy. And then the sidewalks were pretty short. So I could, shovel several walks. But it turns out I didn't shovel very many walks, not the number that I mowed, but a couple of them. And I'm pretty sure this is the first time I shoveled the neighbor's walk to make money like that. And it was a walk around the corner. So not on our street, on the street over. And I don't think my dad checked up on me very often, like what happened that day. For some reason, he came down to look at how I had done. Now, you could use words like inspect and judge or all that kind of stuff. I just really didn't feel that way. I thought I was done, and I'm showing off my work with pride, I think. And my dad just gently said, if you're going to shovel the walk, shovel the walk. And I don't remember him being mad about it at all, but just really matter of fact like that. If you're going to do a job, do it. And he didn't mean it in a mean way at all. And it just really stuck with me. So I finished shoveling the walk, and I'm chuckling because I wonder if at first I was mad like this, or if I treated it like this Disney Pixar moment. Here, listen to this.
All right, over there. Oh!
Yeah, I wasn't like that. And I'm sure my single shovel didn't fill this side of the walk from one shovel, filling the whole walk like that. Here, look at this again.
All right, over
Isn't that
there.
pretty funny? No, it wasn't like that. But when I was done, I'm pretty confident that part of me felt this sense of pride and accomplishment. Now you can say, Keith, you just, you got suckered into that old work ethic. Maybe, but I don't think so. Because even to this day, I love to clear our driveway all the way to the edge. And if I'm going to clear or shovel the driveway, I'm going to clear or shovel the driveway. If I'm going to clear or shovel the walk, I'm going to clear or shovel the walk. So all the way, just like my dad taught me. And I've thought about this so much. Here, listen to this video. When I was growing up, my father always told me, if you're going to shovel the walk, shovel the walk. Isn't that funny? He said it to me once. I'm pretty sure he only said it once, and it stuck with me, and I still love to do that. Ask my wife. I'm out there all the time. Here's a picture she snapped of me where I went out at night in my Viz gear and was doing some of it. So I don't view it just as work. There's something about the effort that I enjoy and the binary nature of it being done. I mean, it's covered and then it's done, and being able to see the tip of the grass peeking out. And I thank my dad for that. It's something he taught me with that one statement that one time. If you're going to shovel the walk, shovel the walk. So I hope as you think about that, there are other lessons like that from your own parents or a friend or, a neighbor or somebody where you learned something that impacted you and then you carried it through your life. But as I was, thinking about that, I went back to that kind of time in my life and thought, or even why do I do that? Or do I carry that over into other things? And by the way, this idea that it's a work ethic, I don't think is true. I think it also, well, it is true, but I think it also holds into like our spiritual life. If we're going to be a Christian, then we should be a Christian. Now, I get that we're totally saved by grace. That's what the Bible tells us. But it also, so that nobody can boast. But it also tells us that faith without works is dead. So there's this thing that when we become a Christian, we should be a Christian. And I think that's part of the lesson that I got from that. That really that idea, if you're going to do something, then do it, should be applied to all aspects of your life. And I think that's part of the lesson my dad was teaching me with that one moment. So that's pretty cool. So anyway, as I was shoveling and thinking about that, and even thinking about how do I live edge to edge in my Christian walk, I had to kind of start saying over the last couple of weeks, because I've really been thinking about this a lot, no, I don't really do a good job of that. And so I started to wonder why I don't always apply that edge to edge thing to my spiritual walk. And it reminded me, and God just reminded me of an event that I hadn't thought about in years that really stuck out to me at the time and caused me some problems in terms of how I thought about God and my relationship with him. So when I was growing up, it was really, really popular when you went to church, and you had these things called revivals, where you would bring in a special guest speaker and you'd have services during the week for a couple nights. And so you didn't just meet on Wednesday or Sunday like we talked about before. There would be these special days, and we called it revival, and you try and revive your spirit and whatnot. And for some reason, it seemed like evangelists and then preachers at the time started saying something like this. They say, if you died tonight, where would you go? And they meant, trying to call you into accountability in terms of wondering where your walk with God was. But they often said this thing that just doesn't make sense to me. So the church I went to was on a main city street, one of the main city streets actually, and it was 3 lanes. But busy, but during most services and after even most services, the street wasn't very busy. But like at night or on a weekend, that street was busy, not just because of the thoroughfare of it being through town for one of the highways or a couple of highways, but because it was one way and the street parallel to it was one way the other way. And kids, including or teenagers or whoever, including myself, used to like to drive what was called the loop, go by our church and then up a ways and then turn and come down the other street and keep doing it. And it was a way to see people and be out and do some stuff. But during a service, people weren't typically out driving the loop. But inevitably during the revival or when the pastors were trying to make you, or it feels like trying to make you feel guilty or call you into that moment, they would say, what would happen if you walked outside and got hit by a bus? And you're like, there are no buses on our street. This is suddenly like the evangelists and pastors have some magic calling card or some number they call, say, bring the buses. And the reason I'm laughing is my wife and I have talked about this, and she heard the same thing. And I didn't meet my wife until I was in grad school. So it was pretty common for people to use that phrase. And I know they were, hopefully they had altruistic reasons for doing that, where they wanted you to think about your relationship, and none of us know when we're going to die. So that's fair. But what my young ears heard was this harsh God who, is waiting to judge me. And if you've read the books or heard me talk much or heard me teach on any of this stuff, you know that God worked really, really hard over 30, 40 years to help me to learn that that's not an appropriate, complete image of him. So he is the ultimate good judge, but we're saved by grace. There's no way we can earn it. Let me give you an example. So this abstract thing I have and that God's brought me to is, if I ask him to forgive me in this moment, how long do I stay worthy from that moment on? And the Bible tells us that Jesus is the only one that was worthy to open the seals in Revelation, and that he is the only pure, spotless lamb, and that we sin. And if we lie about that, if we say we don't, then we deceive ourselves. I mean, there are these scriptures that tell us we cannot be good enough. So while we're called to live this Christian life to the fullest and to do good works and to be into that process, none of us from one moment to another can be good enough. And when God helped me start realizing that, it's like, hey, Keith, you asked me to forgive you. Are you good enough in the next nanosecond to be here? To be with him in eternity forever? And in my mathematical mind, the answer was no, because if I believe the other parts of the scripture that say he is the only one that's worthy, then in no moment of my life can I be worthy for that. When God helped me finally understand that, then the power of his grace started to sink in more. So this idea of going out and getting hit by a bus and God's grace not good enough to cover me from the moment inside the church to the moment outside the church just doesn't add up to me anymore. But back then, it really colored my opinion about God and how I had to work really, really hard to avoid his judgment and be really good. And that's just really not the intent of what the Bible is trying to tell us. So anyway, at that same time, around the same time my dad gave me that, if you're going to shovel the walk, I spent a lot of time with one of my friends who actually looked a lot like me, so much so that people kind of thought we were brothers. And in my family, some of the members of my family even called him little brother. His name was Brian. And Brian and I hung out a lot, and he was musically gifted. I was not. I mean, I can sing, and I've, over the course of time, played several instruments, took music lessons, piano music lessons for a long time. My mom wanted me to do that. And I enjoyed playing a little bit, but I didn't like to practice. But also, I just don't seem to be wired for it. And I played the baritone probably the most. I tried to pick up the cello once when I couldn't do marching band stuff because of cross country so that I could do orchestra. That did not last long, a couple months maybe. And then I also tried to pick up the bass guitar, and that didn't go very well either. But Brian, bless his heart, would spend time with me, and he'd play guitar or piano, and I'd try to pick along on the bass guitar sometimes. And we didn't always do that at our homes. Sometimes we practiced at his small church. And I can't remember if on this day we were going to practice music like that, or we were going to go do something else, because his church was between my house and his house. So I went to his church either to do that practicing or to pick him up because I knew he was there. And he was vacuuming, and I got impatient. And to me, the floor looked plenty clean. And so I'm like, let's go. Let's get to having fun. And he just basically quoted scripture to me. I think it was from Colossians, if memory serves correct, that, work unto the Lord. Now, I know for those of you who really study the Bible, you'll know that that's in one of Paul's letters, and it's in a controversial place where Paul is using examples to very specific groups of people to show them how we're supposed to be Christ-like, no matter where we find ourselves. And this part was in the part to servants, that servants should work as if unto God instead of to those that they're, apparently working for, or for the praise of people. But as I've mentioned before, when you study the Bible, there are certain things that may have been written to a group of people or somebody, but the situation applies to all of us. And if you look at the breadth of that letter or the letters of Paul, you'll see that he's not condoning slavery or servitude or anything like that per se. And that over the course of time, Christians have been the ones who've often tried to stop those things. Not that Christians have been perfect. That's not what I'm trying to say. So anyway, that's kind of a sidetrack. So I think this scripture, based on the breadth of scripture, applies to all of us. That when we work, we're supposed to work as unto God and not unto our boss or the person we're working for or helping. And to me, when I was growing up, I heard that in the moment with the same thing as the bus. That Brian was afraid that if he put down the sweeper too soon, he was getting hit by a bus. Or maybe I was going to get hit by a bus by being upset that he was still sweeping. I don't know. And that rubbed me the wrong way. I wish I could say that moment stuck with me in a positive regard, the same way my dad's simple, if you're going to shovel the walk, did, but it really didn't. And actually, it kind of haunted me for a long time because I got stuck in this rut of thinking, how can I ever be good enough? How can I work unto God, the King, who's worthy of perfection? I can never do that. And that was never the intent of that scripture. God doesn't expect you to do more than what he's given you, and he works great in weakness. And so I just completely misunderstood that moment. I completely misunderstood that scripture for years. And God's been teaching me that working unto him needs to be viewed a different way. So let me give you some examples. What pops to my mind. So let's jump to the end. The Bible has some examples of judgment and different types of judgment. And one of them has God saying, come on in. I know you. Come on in. And the other one's saying, I don't know you, and being cast out. And the people who are cast out even say crazy things like they taught in his name, they healed in his name, they did crazy things that I'll never do. And they're still cast out because God didn't know them. They didn't let God know them. And so that is something I've worked on a lot and prayed on a lot, that God would know me, not that I would be perfect, but that he would know me and I would know him. So that's important. But in that same general area, there's this thing where he says, come on in. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink or whatnot, all these things. And the people say, when did we ever do that? And then he says, when you did this thing, you did it unto me. And I don't know why I never combined that scripture with what Brian said. But when Brian was sweeping the carpet at his small church, so that when the people would come in, it looked great, he was doing that for them. And by doing it for them, he was doing it for God and unto God. And so I can imagine Brian, I don't know how long Brian went on, but it definitely wasn't like this. But I'm showing it because it reminds me of something that where somebody else was sweeping for us and thus unto the Lord. So when Rhonda and I got married, we got married in Marion, even though I didn't live there anymore, because it was convenient for lots of people that were going to be there, come to the wedding. And we had a simple reception in the basement, cake, punch, that kind of thing, not the elaborate dinners that happen now. But still, our family and friends and a few people were trying to make that space nice, and they decorated and whatnot, and our understanding, because not everybody, people didn't carry cell phones and great, media equipment to capture every moment back then. But as we've heard this story, they are done, putting the finishing touch on some sweeping, and I think it was Mark who was sweeping, and the vacuum cleaner bag vacuum cleaner bag explodes. And so then he has to do a lot more sleeping. And if God took the time to go through moments of you fed me and you fed me or you clothed me at that judgment point, so that's a positive thing. I can almost imagine God saying, come on in, Mark. You swept my house when I needed it. And if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I doubt that Mark was thinking, I'm sweeping this for God when he was doing it for Rhonda and me. But he was. I think that's the unto God, unto the King, not for people. And let me give you another example that came to mind. Remember when I said, Christy and I used to argue about whose turn it was to wash the dishes? Well, it turns out that I had the privilege of going to the same college that she went to, and she was a few years older, so she was ahead of me and settled in. And when I got there as a bright-eyed freshman, she did something crazy. Instead of arguing about whose turn it was to wash the dishes, she offered to do my laundry. And I took her up on it, right? I definitely took her up on it. And you think back, and why'd she do that? I mean, in case you can't tell, I've had to cut a lot of time out here. I don't remember how long she did it, but long enough for me to get established. And that was pretty cool. So when judgment comes, so when the time comes, God can say to Christy, come on in. I needed some clean clothes, and you washed them for me. That's edge to edge living as a Christian. When I was thinking about the balance of grace and works, God reminded me of the scriptures that said, excuse me, I've come that you might have abundant life. Have it to the full, depending on what version of the Bible you read. God didn't say, I came to burden you with a bunch of work. He didn't. He works in the Bible. We see that God worked and rested. Jesus worked and rested. They had this balance. And he calls us to that. In our daily lives, our getting up or coming in or going out, those are our gifts of offering. Those are our acts of praise. They don't have to be big things. They don't have to be things that other people see. And a lot of times, our acts of worship are just us serving somebody else because God is a serving God. That's who he is. That's who he calls us to be. And so I think what Brian had learned and was learning long before me was that as he did his acts of service to his community, to his church, to his fellow believers, to his friends, he was doing them unto God. Not that you have to work so hard that it's perfect, because we can't be perfect, but that we should give it a good go and we should put our hearts into it. And I learned that for shoveling the walk, edge to edge. I still love to do that. And God's still working on me to be better at living edge to edge in my Christian walk and doing those acts of service that people don't even know, like washing the dishes or doing the laundry. Abundant life. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the chances and the moments of my life where I got to be part of somebody else's experience abundant life because they were serving and helping me. I'm grateful for God creating an environment where we can do that for each other. And it's a positive thing for me, not a negative thing. Here, I only showed you part of the clip from outside up to where I flipped it to be a selfie. And listen to my voice. I am not mad about shoveling the walk. So when you think of your father and you're living to the edge like this, thank him. Because a lot of people don't do that. And it's not about clearing the snow. It's about living all the way to the edge. Don't just be a partial Christian. Don't just dabble. Live all the way to the edge. So, thanks, Dad. And I'm excited that there's a parallel in Christianity, and it's not about shoveling the walk and just work ethic. It's all this stuff that as we work for each other, we serve each other, we are serving God, and we are experiencing abundant life. And so for those of you who have lived your lives edge to edge and helped me, I just want to thank you. Thanks, Mark, for sweeping up after the mess. And thanks, Christy, for helping with the laundry that one time. And, thanks, Brian, for modeling out the scripture. And thanks, Dad, for taking the time to care enough to come out of the house down around the corner. And gently say, if you're going to shovel the walk, shovel the walk.